Look at your screen. Imagine taking billions of dollars, piling it all up in the middle of a room, and setting it on fire just to create a phone app that generates funny little videos, only to realize that nobody actually wants to give you any money for it. Welcome to the wildly entertaining world of OpenAI. Well, grab some popcorn. Because on March 24, 2026, OpenAI officially announced they are pulling the plug and shutting down their highly hyped Sora app. They didn't even bother to give anyone an explanation as to why they are shutting it down. They just packed up their toys and walked away. But to understand why the hottest tech company on earth just threw their flashiest toy straight into the garbage disposal, you have to look past the press releases and look directly at what you guys were actually doing on the app. Back in September of 2025, OpenAI launched their shiny new video generation model, Sora 2, alongside a brand new smartphone app. It was essentially a TikTok clone. You could endlessly scroll your life away looking at a vertical feed of short videos. But the catch was that every single piece of content was completely generated by artificial intelligence. If you signed up for a free account, OpenAI happily handed you up to 30 free AI video generations each and every day, which you could then publish for other Sora users to view. At first, the app went massively viral. Millions of people rushed to sign up for free accounts, just to see what the magic algorithm could do. But here is the hilarious problem. OpenAI generated almost no revenue from Sora. There were absolutely no ads on the platform. The business model relied entirely on the hope that once you used up your daily limit of 30 free videos, you would happily pull out your credit card and pay real cash to get more. Shockingly, very few people were willing to pay real money to generate AI slop, making the app almost impossible to actually monetize. While Sora started out as an interesting gimmick that everyone wanted to try, the videos quickly became incredibly repetitive and boring. You can only watch an AI-generated dog with 6 legs skateboard down a neon street so many times before you close the app. Do you want to know what the biggest category of videos on Sora actually was? It was just people aggressively trolling Sam Altman by generating videos of him doing highly questionable things. In fact, the most liked video on the entire platform was a hyper-realistic clip of Sam Altman casually walking into a Target store and stealing a graphics card. And worse, you could just screen record these Sora videos and immediately re-upload them to TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts. Because AI-generated videos cannot be copyrighted under current laws, there was really nothing that OpenAI could do to stop you. So, the vast majority of the actual views on Sora-generated videos were happening on external platforms. To the extent that anybody in the world was generating revenue from Sora videos, it was TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube scooping up the ad money, not OpenAI. So OpenAI is bleeding cash, handing out free server time so you can make videos of tech billionaires stealing computer parts. But surely they had a genius monetization plan ready to save the day and make the math work, right? Wrong. And that brings us to the giant cartoon mouse in the room, Disney. Sam Altman knows how to write a blog post. He used to publish updates on his website, samaltman.com, pretty regularly, although he has taken a bit of a hiatus recently. His very last post was back in October of 2025, giving the world an update on Sora. In that post, he openly admitted that OpenAI needs to start generating revenue from the app somehow. It seems their one and only master plan to actually make a profit was to let you pay real money for the permission to generate AI videos featuring famous fictional characters. OpenAI would then take the money you paid and give a share of the revenue back to the original copyright holders. This scheme is exactly what the massive partnership with Disney, announced late last year, was supposed to be all about. On December 11, 2025, OpenAI and Disney proudly announced what they called a landmark agreement to bring beloved characters from across Disney's legendary brands directly into Sora. You would be able to pay a fee and suddenly direct your own movies using characters from Star Wars and Marvel. During the announcement, OpenAI boldly declared that as part of the agreement, Disney will make a $1 billion equity investment into OpenAI and receive warrants to purchase even more equity later. Notice how OpenAI always uses that aggressive, definitive language. They didn't say Disney might make a $1 billion investment. They didn't say Disney plans to make it. They literally said, Disney will make a $1 billion investment. The wording was perfectly crafted to imply that this massive cash injection was totally set in stone, which is highly convenient since we all know OpenAI desperately needs all the money it can get its hands on. But as it turns out, that giant pile of Disney money was pure fantasy. The investment never happened, and it is never going to happen. With Sora no longer existing, the previously announced partnership with Disney has been officially terminated. Disney will not be handing over a single dime to OpenAI. Why did this supposedly bulletproof partnership completely fall apart? You have to remember that Disney was being asked to put a $1 billion equity investment at risk. That is a staggering amount of money to gamble. To actually cut that check, Disney would need to be reasonably confident that they could make back at least a good chunk of that money through the Sora revenue share. And while OpenAI absolutely refuses to publicly disclose their usage or revenue data for Sora, there are massive glowing signs that the app was a monumental flop. Sure, the app was downloaded 9.6 million times across iOS and Android, but the vast majority of you just downloaded it, messed around with it for a couple of days, got incredibly bored, and never opened it ever again. Almost nobody was willing to pay real money for it. There is an analytics firm called AppFogers Intelligence that estimates how much cash iOS and Android apps actually bring in. According to their internal estimates, Sora's revenue peaked at an embarrassing $540,000 in December and then fell all the way down to $367,000 in January. $500,000 of monthly revenue is basically nothing for a massive tech company. You might as well just round it down to zero. While we don't have the exact accounting figures, Sora to almost certainly cost OpenAI billions of dollars to develop and keep the servers running for 6 months. Sora will go down as one of the dumbest and most wasteful ventures in the entire history of business. They burned billions of dollars and have absolutely nothing to show for it. Disney executives likely looked at the internal numbers, realized that none of you are ever going to spend real money on this, and decided they would never make their investment back. Plus, they probably wanted to avoid the intense public embarrassment of tying their legendary brand to an app that was such an obvious crashing failure. That is exactly why they packed up their bags and pulled out of the partnership. But wait, it gets even funnier. Because while you might assume that incinerating billions of dollars on a failed video app would force a CEO to sit down and rethink his life choices, you clearly haven't been paying attention. Sam Altman himself has openly bragged that he is not business-minded and doesn't care at all about how much money OpenAI burns. So, what do you do when your video app goes up in flames? You pivot to science fiction. The publication The Information claims they gained access to a leaked internal memo written by Sam Altman explaining the sudden decision to execute Sora. In that memo, Altman told his staff that the Sora research team will now prioritize longer-term world simulation research, specifically as it pertains to robotics. There are growing, neon-flashing signs that OpenAI is fully pivoting to building robots. On January 15, 2026, OpenAI dropped a very interesting press release titled, "Strengthening the USA." A supply chain through domestic manufacturing. In this release, they claim they are actively seeking suppliers for critical inputs needed for advanced robotics. They are out there shopping for gearboxes, motors, and power electronics. On top of buying parts, they are aggressively hiring robotics engineers. They recently posted an active job listing looking for a research engineer for SLAM and multi-view geometry. SLAM is an acronym for simultaneous localization and mapping, which is essentially the computer vision technique that robots use to see the world around them. The job description mentions that the role involves working on real-time and offline SLAM pipelines used during teleoperation and robot data collection. It appears wildly obvious that OpenAI is going to try and develop a humanoid robot to directly compete with Tesla's Optimus robot. Altman has been dreaming about metal men for a while now. In June of 2025, he gave an interview to Bloomberg where he sounded like a guy who had just walked out of a screening of The Terminator. He told the interviewer, "I don't think the world has really had the humanoid robots moment yet." He went on to say, "I think like the first day you're like walking down the street and there's like 7 robots that walk past you doing things or whatever. It's going to feel very sci-fi." According to Altman, in the very near future, you will see 7 humanoid robots just casually strolling past you on the sidewalk, doing chores. And I know exactly what you are thinking right now. Wait a second. Didn't I just watch a viral video of an AI robot gracefully folding laundry and making a cup of coffee? But before you start welcoming our new robot overlords and handing them the keys to your house, let me pull back the curtain and show you how this magic trick actually works. OpenAI runs a venture capital arm called the Startup Fund, which has $175 million ready to invest in smaller companies. Keep in mind, OpenAI is currently losing money and relies on outside venture capital funding just to keep their own lights on. But they take some of that borrowed money and recycle it to make their own venture investments. The Startup Fund has already poured cash into 2 different humanoid robot startups. In 2023, they led a massive funding round for a company called 1X Home Robotics. Then, in 2024, they threw more money into a funding round for Figure AI. Both of these highly hyped startups are basically giant failures. 1X developed a robot called Neo that is heavily advertised as a machine that will eventually do all the chores in your house. Back in October of 2025, they invited the Wall Street Journal over for a live demonstration. It was pure comedy. The robot moved incredibly awkwardly and could barely perform even the most basic household tasks. Why? Because the Neo robot does not actually have any autonomous capabilities yet. During the entire demonstration, the robot was just being remotely controlled by a human teleoperator sitting behind a desk with a controller. But hey, at least 1X was honest about it and allowed the journalist to see the robot's embarrassing performance for what it actually was. The exact same thing cannot be said for Figure AI. Figure has a long documented history of completely deceiving the public by posting highly staged and deeply misleading demo videos to make their robots look autonomous when they aren't. But investing in other people's failing robots apparently isn't enough for Sam Altman anymore. He now wants OpenAI to build its own humanoid machines from scratch. The funniest part of this whole story is that OpenAI pivoting to robotics shouldn't actually surprise anyone, because they are just running in a giant circle. When OpenAI was first founded back in 2015, they had a very vague mandate to build artificial general intelligence. They were not initially focused on those large language models that eventually became ChatGPT. They experimented with all sorts of things. One of their very first major projects was trying to develop artificial intelligence that could power robots. In 2019, they proudly showed off a robot hand that they claimed could successfully solve a Rubik's Cube. But then, in 2020, they completely abandoned all of their robotics research so they could focus every single dollar and every single engineer on developing ChatGPT. That was 6 years ago. So why on earth are they suddenly crawling back to robots now? Because the text generation party is finally winding down. Large language models are rapidly reaching the point of diminishing returns. The highly anticipated GPT-5 was a massive disappointment to the tech world because it only offered a tiny marginal improvement over GPT-4. The leaps in intelligence have hit a wall. Altman is currently getting ready to launch OpenAI's upcoming initial public offering, and he desperately needs a brand new narrative to sell to Wall Street investors. You can't hype up a massive IPO when your flagship video app just burned to the ground and your chatbot is barely getting smarter. So, he is pivoting back to robotics to sell a dream. But here's the cold hard truth that they don't want to admit. There is a very good reason OpenAI abandoned its robotics division in the first place. Creating a fully autonomous humanoid robot that can actually perform useful tasks in your living room without bumping into walls is simply not possible with our current technology. In fact, it will probably not be possible within our lifetimes. Just look at Tesla. Elon Musk announced the Optimus humanoid robot back in 2021. He has stood on stages and made grandiose statements about how Optimus is going to displace all human jobs and make the company worth trillions of dollars. 5 years have passed since that announcement, and all we have today are staged demo videos where the Optimus robot is still being remotely controlled by human teleoperators standing off camera. Within the next year or so, you can expect to see the exact same theater production from OpenAI. They will probably slap together a shiny metal prototype of a humanoid robot. Altman will step into the spotlight and make a bunch of grandiose claims and wild predictions about how it will change the fabric of human society. They will publish some beautifully lit, heavily staged PR demonstrations. But at the end of the day, it will not be able to do anything actually useful for you. It's all a show designed to keep the investment dollars rolling in. Keep your wallet closed, enjoy the memes, and I'll see you in the next one.